Hello, Trainmaster04 here, and welcome back to the Great Smoky Mountains Railroad, where today I will be giving my very first layout update since my first inauguration of the layout itself to you through a layout tour. So without further ado, let's get started.
Union Pacific 4014, do you read me? Over. Roger that. Union Pacific 4014, I copy that. Over. Startup and stand by. Over. Yes, sir. Start up and stand by. Out.
Over the last year since I produced the layout tour video, there have been a lot of action going on the layout. In this case, since last time you had visited the GSMR, there have been updates to the mountain, completion of almost the entire mountain, as I should mention, the sawmill and Churchill also being completed, new buildings being added into the town and industrial area, and more importantly, new buildings that I've custom made for the mine itself. As a recap for yourself, this is a 2 mainline layout with a center loop with 072 and an outer loop for the main line itself going up into a graded area of the layout. And if you would want to get more detailed information as to the backstory and history of the layout, or more importantly, the details of how the layout was built, go ahead and check out the original layout tour video, which I'll post a link down below and probably up in one of the corners for this video. But without further ado, let's go ahead and build up a train and follow it around the layout. First stop on this update tour is actually the yard. In this case, if you've been following my videos or maybe even my community posts, you'll notice that there have been a few changes to this area in particular. In this case, this area once was an empty space with just a little bit of green grass and really no future plans on as to what it was going to be. Initially, I was just going to put a few buildings such as a switch tower and maybe even a yard office down the road, but it eventually turned into this conglomeration of really kind of a crew village. In this case, the buildings include a repurposed caboose turned into a yard office for all the train crews to get all of their orders, and even a break area for those who are just coming off of a train. A switch tower by Menards, which I got that last winter. A nice addition in this case since it is nicely weathered and also has some figures on it to really populate this area. A coffee shop, which I hand built through a Bar Mill Studios kit. And in this case, it is a nice little structure for this corner as it is a small footprint, but in this case is a walk-up kind of coffee shop, which is perfect for all crews to come in, get a quick coffee, maybe even a newspaper to relax with, and be on their way. And finally, the last two buildings, if you notice, are a little bit different. In this case, they were actually scratch built by myself out of balsa wood. The brown building is a bunkhouse for all the crew members that don't have a permanent residence or maybe temporary employees for the railroad. And then the white building is actually a repurposed project that used to be a switch tower. The original switch tower for this layout is now turned into a barbecue place with an open pit area and seating area for all the crews to go and sit down and enjoy a nice meal, other than eating at the soda shop. As Southern Pacific 2353 pulls her passenger train about the outer skirts of town, we then come into the center of it as it makes its way through, and in this case, there is not a lot of stuff coming into the town in this video, but there is a new addition to it, and that is the hardware store. For a good while, I've been wanting to add a hardware store to the layout because, in my personal experience of visiting Bryson City, North Carolina, and even Gatlinburg, Tennessee, there have been wonderful hardware stores that have been there for many decades, still open and in operation, just as if they had never closed. In this case, I wanted to replicate that on my layout since I have such a great memory of visiting those said hardware stores. For the building itself, it is another kit from Bar Mills Studios, and in my experience with it, I quite enjoyed it. The kit itself did have a few interesting instructions in the sense of how it was supposed to be put together, but overall, I was quite pleased with how it ended up. In this case, the model itself isn't a plastic kit, but instead is a wood with a few resin details included with it. The resin details being the fire hydrant, weigh scale, and even the chimney on top. And overall, I was able to incorporate some details from the coffee shop, such as the newspapers, and give it a really nice, realistic feel. In addition, I also weathered this building to make it a more grimy, used look, considering most of the other buildings on my layout look like they had just been recently built, but in this case, I could go and make this building whatever I wanted. Overall, if you ever want to go and build a Bar Mill Studios kit in either O, S, HO, or even N, I would definitely suggest going with them because they quite have a nice selection of buildings. The next area of interest on the layout is actually the grade crossing. Now, I know what you may think. What's up with a grade crossing in this case, and why am I even mentioning it? Well, there's actually a few things that I've added in this area, such as the telephone poles, the grade crossing signs, and even a nice little grade crossing shanty. Now, for the telephone poles, they are something that I've had for many, many years, going all the way back to my very first layout, so really, these telephone poles have been with me since the very beginning, and as a result, I wanted to go and add them to the layout. For the grade crossing signs and also the shanty, they are indeed made out of balsa wood and were also something I made during my final high school year as just some kind of pastime in between my classes. In this case, the grade crossings were a little tedious to produce, but I was able to make them and also be able to make my own paper decals to go onto them. The first step in them was actually building the shape for the grade crossings and painting them white, something fairly easy to do with some simple measurements that I roughly was able to agree with based upon the size of the trains and also the size of the vehicles. Next, I went on to Office Max Word and was able to size down the lettering to a point that I actually enjoyed against the wooden posts, and then took a simple toothpick with some Elmer's glue on it and glued on the decals. In this case, the decals themselves I've used multiple times on my other buildings and also on these grade crossings, and really I would like to actually continue to use them in different ways, and I would definitely suggest them for anybody else that's wanting to make simple decals on a budget. For the shanty itself, that was actually inspired by some buildings I've seen online in kit form, but in my opinion, I really wanted to actually build it on my own, so as a result, I took a few scrap pieces of balsa I had and created this little structure. In this case, this structure is used to house a employee to make sure that the grade crossing is protected when trains go by. In this case, this isn't a job that is well suited, but I have provided the employees some amenities such as a desk and a bed on the interior, so hopefully I won't have a strike down the road. Moving on over to the station area. In this area, there's also been some more activity with the inclusion of both a scratch-built building that I built myself and then also something I picked off of the OGR forum. In this area, similar to the original yard area, this was going to be something open for debate. In this case, I was thinking about very hard of either turning it into a little pond with a river running off of the mountain, but in this case, I've decided to make it into a hobo camp. Since my layout is based off of the golden age of Steam, so the 1920s into the 50s, there is no doubt going to be some form of a hobo campment in the Great Smoky Mountains. In this case, this area is populated by an MTH hobo camp, which does have nice lighting for the interior, exterior, and campfire, nicely populated, and will soon be filled into this area quite nicely with foliage and, more importantly, trees to go and keep cover for their encampment. Now, as typical of hobos, they are right next to the rail line, both to the yard loop and the main line, and is also next to the second building, the same building that I scratch built. Taking inspiration from the Chama, New Mexico coaling tower, I decided to make myself a coaling tower for the layout in a standard gauge form. In this case, this is a balsa build as well and is still under construction, but overall it does do the job quite nicely right now until I can actually get a nicer coal tower that I like a little bit better. But for now, it still looks very nice. Taking another moment away from the train as it goes into the mountain itself, probably one of the biggest improvements to the layout itself is in an area that I really hadn't showcased in my last video, and that is this little valley area. Originally, the mountain was meant to be wrapped around this last section of incline before it reaches the top part of the mountain, or otherwise known as the mine, and really just be an open, unseen area. Now, as time went on, since the last time I visited the layout, I really started looking at the layout in this area as a possible video and scenic area. In this case, in some angles of my former YouTube videos and even some of my running session videos, this area can be seen in the very distant and really didn't bring the effect of this being an actual mountain railroad come to life. Instead, it just really showed a not so flattering side of the layout where storage of former accessories, parts, and other things were just hidden away from the main area. So, as a result, earlier this year, I decided to actually go and change that by turning it into an actual valley. This area I plan on either putting in a HO scale brewery or even an O scale water mill, depending on the space constraints of either or building. And as you can see right now, it is quite nicely finished with all of the plaster cloth completed, but it still needs a good paint job. In this case, as I started painting through here, I was hoping I would have enough paint, but unfortunately I did not. So now, most of the trains that go in and out of this area are going into a minor whitewashed scenery, but hopefully in the near future will progress into a more complete feel. As the train makes its stop around in the mountain area, or otherwise known as the coal mine, this area has also seen a drastic change since the last time you visited my layout. In this case, originally the mine was fairly sparse with any form of buildings and really was just the main coal elevator with a few tunnel entrances coming in and out of the mountain itself. Over the year and plus, there has been an addition of many new buildings and hand-built structures that I've built over my senior year of high school. In between classes and also during lunch breaks, I found myself in an itch to go and build my own buildings. Originally, I was going to purchase multiple kits off of online that I quite enjoyed, but as I started looking at the price tag, which was ever growing, and also seeing that most of these structures were built out of wood, I decided, well, I could do that myself, and thus I did. Now the coal mine area is well populated for the time being, with both multiple miner shacks, all three of them being built in a similar stature, but also a little bit different from each other, a loading platform with handmade wood beam pallets, as well as a hand-built crane that I took inspiration from simple little logging operation cranes, and also built out of spare wood and chain that I've had over the years. A blacksmith, which interior-wise does have two scratch-built forges, which I hope in the future to actually further populate with an actual blacksmith figure with a anvil, hammer, and many other tools scattered around in there. There is also a nice little horse corral, which I had acquired many years ago from a model train auction, which may or may not be in its permanent location, but in this case, since the mine is used with horsepower to pull all of the coal cars into the interior of the mine, they are definitely needed a place to call home. Furthermore, there are other buildings that are associated with the mine itself that you typically don't see that very often, but I have made place around the mountain area, and that is a woodshed, because definitely as the mine increases in size, there is going to be needing a increase of timbers to hold up the ceiling, and also a nice little shack at the entrance of the mine for personnel to actually clock in and clock out with time coins. In this case, this little building is actually nicely detailed on the interior with a desk, shelving, and various other pieces of comfort. And finally, the coal elevator itself has been associated with a nice trestle that I've hand built leading up into the mine, and then another mine entrance on the bottom.
My handbrakes are knocked off, dispatcher. Can I get a green light? Over. Roger, your track is clear. Dispatcher, over. Roger that. We got your signal. Train is moving,
Coming off the main mountain and going into the valley, here we come back to our faithful old little mountains, in this case the first one being Saw Hill. Now, the last time we visited Saw Hill, it was still primarily under construction, where most of its structure was completed, but there was no plaster cloth over the cardboard construction, nor was there any form of scenery completed on the mountain. In this case, currently the mountain is kind of in a bit of a completed limbo, with the few remaining items that need to be done to it is a few touch-up paint here and there over the plaster cloth, a few more foliage from Woodland Scenics, and most importantly, some trees and the sawmill. In this case, the hill itself will still be called Saw Hill once I am able to require a HO sawmill, and will soon be completed as soon as that is possible. Overall, the mountain is currently updated with 2 wooden tunnel portals that I made myself, some of the first few structures that I made out of balsa wood when I was building the coal mine area, and as of now is still a current project in work. Finally, before this journey across the GSMR comes to an end, we finally reach towards Church Hill. As you remember from the last video I did on the layout, similar to Saw Hill, Church Hill also was still a semi-finished structure on the layout itself. Originally, this area was a blank canvased area where the track just came into a turn on a corner of the layout with nothing really benefiting the entire feel and persona of the layout itself. As a result, I decided to build these two little hills in the corner to really give this area some life. And as a result, from the last video, Church Hill was born along with her sister, Saw Hill. In this case, Church Hill has seen quite an advancement in detail. In this case, most of the structure itself is completely painted, weathered, and also flocked with foliage, trees, and even lichen across the entirety of the hill. But there are still a few minute areas that need to be completed, such as some more painting on the opposite side, and a few more details on the interior to give the tunnel an actual, well, feeling of a rock-cut tunnel. In this case, the tunnel itself is primarily completed, so is the detail of the hill, but there's still room for improvement. That's about it for this episode of the GSMR Layout Tour. And before I go, I just want to say thank you very much for another extraordinary year of Trainmaster 04 YouTube. In this case, I will still continue to produce wonderful videos for you all to enjoy, such as layout tour videos, hopefully future updates, and also be producing future product reviews. In this case, I will be signing off for now as I enter the next chapter of my life and hopefully await the next product to come out from Lionel. Without further ado, if you would like to support my channel any further, please go ahead and click that like button, as that allows me to know you've actually enjoyed this type of content. And also, while you're at it, if you would like to no longer miss any of my future videos that I've stated, also go ahead and click on the subscribe button, as that will automatically register you into my YouTube channel and will also automatically give you updates when I post new videos. With that said, thank you very much for watching this update video, and I'll see you next time.